So Wallace Stevens is clearly, I think, a great poet. I think he does deserve that word, great. He's a great poet. And a friend of mine suggested I read his collected poems, quite a substantial volume. And I used to read it every morning before meditation. This was a few years ago now. Every morning I'd get up, have a cup of tea, read Wallace Stevens, and then go and meditate. And I got through the whole collected poems without understanding a single word. I mean, it was gorgeous, don't get me wrong. I remember being very aware how beautiful it was, how ornate the language was, how almost gorgeous in your mouth if you were to speak it. But, I didn't know, are we looking down a road? Are we thinking something? Is this a dream? Is it a parable? Help me with this. Yeah. And yet, even though I read it that first time and just got, in a way, nothing from it, I was left with a sense of enlightened mystification. There was something about Stevens that I kind of kept wanting to know, I kept wanting to go back to. So I went back to Stevens again and again. I even read books and books of critical essays on Stevens, and sometimes I didn't even understand the essays on Stevens, never mind the Stevens themselves. I remember reading Helen Vendler on Stevens, thinking, wonderful, but I've got no idea what she's talking about. And yet somehow I keep going back to Stevens, keep going back to Wallace Stevens. It's interesting how many people do that. Marina Warner, when I interviewed her for PoetryEast, she says she keeps Wallace Stevens on her desk when she's writing all the time. Marilyn Robinson, who is perhaps one of the great modern novelists, I think, writing now, she says in her new book of essays that Stevens is the poet she goes back to again and again, the poet she goes back to most. So many people keep on going back to Stevens. There's something there that is profoundly meaningful, profoundly beautiful, no doubt about that, but also profoundly meaningful. So I'm going to lead a day at the Ledbury Poetry Festival. PoetryEast, in a way, is going to the Ledbury Poetry Festival. Have a whole day exploring Stevens. We're going to have a morning where we're going to explore The Man with the Blue Guitar, a wonderful sequence of poems. We're going to be meditating in that. We're going to listen to some songs. I've got a friend who's a singer-songwriter who's going to write songs from that. We'll have dramatic readings. We'll have close readings. I'll talk about the historical context. We'll try and get to what does Stevens mean? What is the beauty meaning? And then in the afternoon, we're going to have three emerging critics talking about Stevens, the poet and the work, and we're going to explore different angles on Stevens. And then the day rounds off with a wonderful interview. Hopefully, I'm sure it'll be a wonderful interview with Mark Doty, the American poet, a wonderful poet in his own right, who again is another poet, another writer who keeps going back and back to Stevens. So come and join us on the 3rd of July at the Ledbury Poetry Festival. See you there.